This is News Guardian. News Guardian.
Love your show. You got great topics. You got great guests.
On WFJX, Fox Radio 910.
In 1972, a crack commando unit was sent to prison by a military court for a crime they didn't commit. These men promptly escaped from a maximum security stockade to the Los Angeles underground. Today, still wanted by the government, they survive as soldiers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team.
Yeah, baby. I'm liking this Monday.
You watched too much TV when you were a kid.
This is one of the only shows, I think, that's still politically correct to have watched. I mean, imagine telling people that you watch the Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, they rerun that all the time on the country music station.
You just can't talk about it.
Oh, yeah. I was flipping around and I saw Daisy Duke strutting around.
That's not the problem.
That wouldn't make it on TV today either.
Oh, that would be fine. What wouldn't make it on TV is a car with a rebel flag called the General Lee. with number 1 painted on the side of it.
Well, we should stop the music because we have a lot to talk about.
Is there a ton to do?
Man, there is, somebody asked me over the weekend, is when you do the radio show, how much prep time do you need? Well, if you didn't have so many, there's more stories to talk about. Of course, you're running times. They're running a story this morning about the fact that there will be more travelers in the summertime than there. There's going to be more people vacationing in the summer. That's a story.
As ridiculous as the idea that that's news is, I would prefer them to be reporting on idiotic stories like that than doing anything serious, because if they do something serious, they do it wrong. And their version of it is full of crap.
Plus, they took a story. It was a story from a group that has a vested interest in travel. They seem to have a problem with the crime statistics that were used during the election, but it's okay if a travel group puts together a story that there's more travel.
Well, yeah, and they may have even placed some advertising somewhere in the newspaper for all we know. So, wow. Now, we promised we would finish the story about chemtrails from Friday, which we'll get to in a minute, because I've got it right here. We promise, we deliver. But also what has popped out, as first I saw reported in the Telegraph UK, is they have finally uncovered the fact that scientists in collusion with the government have been frauding the temperature data for the last 100 years. They've gone back and actually changed the data so they could create the numbers necessary to prove global warming. And we're not kidding. We're not kidding. This is not a hoax. This is not April Fool's. This is actually there.
George Orwell said one time, "He who controls the past controls the future."
Yes, you're absolutely right. Now, if you're like us and have a problem with the government forcing you against your will to do things like support public programs, libraries or parks or things, none of which I'm against, then you'll enjoy this story. Because in Kansas, there are people who have actually put up free libraries. And Kansas is telling them they have to remove these free libraries or they're going to face huge fines and penalties. So here's the government of Kansas, which has now set the stage for using deadly force to stop free citizens from establishing free libraries. Because if you're going to have a library, it has to be done at the point of a gun. And you have to fork over your money so that the government can build your library. That's the way libraries to be done, not by free citizens creating. We'll tell you about that. We're going to, don't forget, talk about finish up the chemtrail stories. Hillary Clinton, he says that if you support the Second Amendment, not only are you a terrorist, but you're not entitled to have your Second Amendment opinion. You should not be allowed to have your opinion.
Well, that sounds about right. For Hillary Clinton, of course.
So 50 years later, some top secret documents inside Central Intelligence have been released into the open Central Intelligence community, not to private citizens like us. And they have discovered that Lee Harvey Oswald was a CIA employee. And
That's not a fake. That's not a fake
no,
story.
that's
either.
not a fake story either. And they have added him to the CIA memorial wall where they put CIA agents who were killed in duty. He's on the CIA memorial wall now. We'll tell you all about that. But let's get to finishing up Friday's story, which was the chemtrails. Because I promised. What happened here? And just briefly, when you see planes fly over and there's that line of what looks like a cloud kind of behind it. Sometimes it kind of dissipates. Sometimes those are contrails, which are caused by condensation, which is why it's called a contrail, which happens because of the jet propulsion. However, people started seeing trails like that didn't dissipate as fast, that were much thicker, much longer, and happened even when there was no chance for the condensation present to cause a contrail, and called them chemtrails. Now, anybody who has said that planes were flying, spraying some sort of gaseous cloud over the skies of America have been called conspiracy theorists. And I was talking to Elizabeth about this story over the weekend, and she said, well, no, when they first started doing it, they did talk about it. And then people started to complain and ask questions, and so they eliminated from the public.
They had a website bragging about, I mean, it was on their own website. It was bragging about it.
Wow.
There was,
and then they removed it.
Yeah.
And covered it up, and then started calling people that talked about chemtrails conspiracy theorists. Well, here's a gentleman who is actually engineer, who his job, along with other people, were to install the chemical equipment inside of airplanes, the tanks, the hoses, the pressure pumps, and the nozzles to the external fuselage of the plane that would spray the chemicals and make the chemtrails. And he took pictures inside the plane, outside the plane. He took pictures of them flying, leaving the chemtrail from the plane, and published them. And when he did, they fired him. He was fired. He says, we gutted the plane, mounted the tanks, installed the cables and lines and spraying devices. I was a civilian worker supervised by the military. When we finished, we were told that this was a test conducted by German Aeronautics and Space Administration, meaning the plane with the spraying devices goes ahead while a second plane with a measuring device flies behind and conducts measurements. We wanted to find out how the particles behave and propagate. So when we're finished with the installation, guys from the military come over and instructed us to wear full-body protective clothing and breathing masks because they were now going to fill the tanks, and that substances like aluminum sulfides or barium oxides would contain highly toxic nanoparticle-sized polymers. He says we are moving towards an ecological catastrophe. Now, I started to put more validity into this chemtrail story when I uncovered the fact that Archer Daniels Midland had gotten patents for seeds, genetically altered seeds that were designed to grow in soil with a high aluminum content. Did you catch that, News Guardian Chip?
I caught it.
Now, this gentleman says they are spraying aluminum oxides, and ADM is genetically altering seeds and getting patents for these seeds to protect them that will grow in soil with too much aluminum in it.
Aluminum?
That's the way the British say, aluminum. Why is that? Now, will regular seeds not grow in a high aluminum soil? Is it possible that ADM sees the fact that there's going to be a crop situation after the continual spraying of these aluminum oxides, and they're going to have a corner on the food market by having the only patented seed that'll grow in a high aluminum soil? This sounds like just nutty, crazy stuff from some movie. But as time passes, the facts present themselves just to tell the story. This is not the Twilight Zone.
It's left me speechless.
Well, if you go to newsguardians.com later today, I'm going to put the pictures up that this gentleman took and published. They got him fired. I'm going to put them up along with the links so you can see this for yourself, and I'll even find the links to the story about the patents for the seeds that are genetically altered to grow in a high aluminum soil. Because I think this sounds so nutty that unless you see it for yourself, you just may not believe it. So we'll put that up. I mean, already on a Monday, we've got this kind of craziness. So we got a bunch of stories, a lot of stories to talk about this morning. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will jump right into everything that's happened over the last few days. Boy, has it been a doozy. We're the News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
And we're back. We'd like to let you know that this segment is brought to you by Bramilton Computer. Not because they bought an ad or anything, only because I've got a story to tell. Do you want to hear my Bramilton Computer story?
I'm dying to hear it.
You know nothing about this.
I know nothing about this.
This is wild. But so I'm moving my company website, right, over to my own server because it's been hosted by another server company for a long time, and I finally realized, why I have my own server. Why am I paying somebody else to host my own website? So I moved it over last week, and one of the things I needed to do before making the official switch was to back up all the emails that I've had as it's been routed through that server company for the last 11 years, I think it is. And so I went to back it up and the only way I could figure out how to do this was to use like Outlook and set up Outlook to go like you'd be using Outlook, but I don't use Outlook, and it would download all of the emails that were on that server, right? So Outlook gets about 10% into downloading what turned out to be, I think, 23,000 emails. It gets about 10% in and locks up.
Wow.
So I can't get it to close. I can't get it to do anything. So I shut the computer down. I start back up, and I open up Outlook. So Outlook opens up into a locked up position. So then I decide, all right, I'm going to try this again, but I can't get Outlook to work. So I'm going to uninstall Outlook and reinstall Outlook, right? So I go to uninstall Outlook, and it freezes on the uninstall.
Okay.
So I shut the computer off, and I turn the computer back on. And I go into the uninstall Outlook again, and now my computer is telling me that it doesn't understand the language necessary to do the uninstall. Like it's not Windows is no longer even recognizing its own uninstaller subroutine. Is this too technical?
It's getting there.
Okay, so I look, and it doesn't look like Outlook is on there anymore. So I think, well, maybe that's why it can't uninstall, because it doesn't realize it's already uninstalled. So I'll try installing Outlook again now that I'm done. So I go to reinstall Outlook, and now it's telling me it can't recognize the installer program that's used to install Outlook. So I called up Keith at Bramilton Computer, and I said, Keith,
hook a brother up.
This is simple. I know nothing is broken. It's just some sort of idiotic little computer code thing, but I don't have the tools necessary. Can you do it? He says, bring it up. So I took it up there and I left it with them. And one of his technicians messed with it for about 90 minutes. Now, they have some special stuff because they work on computers every day. So they had this special program that's designed to go in and actually completely uninstall things when Windows is broken down and not uninstalled something properly and then is locked up and won't work like mine is. Now, for us to do that, it would be fairly expensive for us to buy these software programs to make all these little things fixed that get broken. But since they do it every day, they have it. And in 90 minutes, it had uninstalled that, reinstalled that, backed up all of my emails, and I was ready to finally move my website. So a shout out to Bramilton Computer.
That was a long way to go. I could have told that story in 30 seconds or less. But I'm glad
I could have told that story in 21 seconds or less. I just chose not to.
Bramilton Computers are awesome. They fixed my computer. Thank you.
They did. But, I mean, this was... Normally, I do these things myself.
I know. But
I mean, so
everybody needs help once in a while.
Right.
Greg.
The point of this story is that sometimes even people who are pretty computer savvy and do these things on their own still find themselves in a position you can't do anything about. And Bramilton Computers, they are the expert's expert. If you fancy yourself an expert and still find yourself with a problem, these guys can fix it. They did it. I watched it. Thanks, guys. Anyway. Now we've finished that story. Oh, and if you're interested in Bramilton Computer, you can find them on Facebook. If you live in Vinton, they have a store in Vinton called Vinton Computer.
That was great. So I'm sure they appreciated the 7-minute commercial.
I appreciated the fact that they fixed all this and I got to move my website.
Can we talk about Lee Harvey Oswald or
yes,
global
we
warming
can.
now?
So we teased you earlier with Lee Harvey Oswald being added to the CIA memorial wall. No kidding. This is from Langley, Virginia. Startled employees of the Central Intelligence Agency discovered this morning, this was last Friday, that Lee Harvey Oswald had been quietly added to the memorial wall at CIA headquarters. Oswald is widely believed to have assassinated U.S. President John F. Kennedy or someone dressed like him in Dallas in 1963. The action does not appear to have been a prank. As of press time, the extra star was still there, along with Oswald's name listed in the memorial book located between entries for fallen agents Felix Leiter and Charles Calthrop. A spokesman from the CIA refused to comment or elaborate on why the agency has added Oswald's name to the memorial, only saying that after 50 years, several documents had been declassified and finally allowed the agency to set the record straight. Inside the agency, of course. So, wait. Does that mean that the CIA was involved in the Kennedy assassination? Or that Oswald just happened to be working for them and got caught up in a dragnet? What does this mean?
Well, one of the CIA analysts that worked there says you can't just do something like this and not explain it further. Well, yeah, they can.
Yeah, they can. They just did.
But it says in the story the documents will be made available to the general public in another 20 years. So if you can wait 20 years, Greg, you can find out exactly what happened. Maybe Oliver Stone was right all along. They call him a conspiracy theorist.
But in this wild though, his name is really on the wall. What in the? And this is official. What is going on here?
Why would they do that? Because it's going to do nothing but to cause questions and problems and maybe who knows.
Well, now there was, I don't remember if this was in the movie you were talking about, but it was suspected for a long time that Lee Harvey Oswald was actually killed in 1959 leading an undercover CIA mission in Cuba to try to overthrow the Castro government. And that the guy who was arrested in November in '63 was actually a KGB assassin who had been trained to impersonate Oswald as part of a false flag operation, working for the mafia. He was working for the American mafia, who were really mad at Kennedy because his brother was using the FBI to kick their butts. But that's just one theory. All of this is so convoluted. This is why when they start talking about who did what to whom in Iraq, that it just becomes so nonsensical and convoluted and confusing that to talk about any of these things with any kind of authority is ridiculously naive. I mean, George Bush's dad supposedly goaded Saddam Hussein into invading Kuwait so he'd have an excuse to start a war in Iraq. Is that true? Who knows? But there's just so much stuff out there. How in the world, as complicated as things have gotten, can you make informed opinions about things and advocate from a position of intelligence and thoughtfulness when everything is so whack?
Whack. You're very profound, and then you ended up with being whack, like you're a '90s, like you're a rapper from 1994. Congratulations!
I'm just trying to speak the lingo.
You're pretty fly.
I'm just trying to speak the lingo of the people.
Yeah, I'm sure the people, rappers from 1997, were down with that, yo.
Now, I don't say that because I think we should just sit on our hands and nothing can ever be done. It's to get people to think before they just start saying stuff because of something they saw on television. To understand that the amount of information you get about something is usually just the surface. It's usually just what's barely scratched the surface of what there is to know about something, and it's only the information designed to motivate you to have a certain opinion, because that's what they're trying to get support to do, because they have something they want to do. The military, the government, the CIA, who knows? They have a course of action they want to take, so the information that they get out to the media and to us is designed to get us the idea that that's what should be done, so that we will demand they do what they were trying to do in the first place.
Maybe.
Who knows? You can't prove anything.
Yeah. But you automatically go to the assumption that everything is manipulated. Now, it could be.
I go to the assumption that you can't tell the difference.
Well,
there's no way to know the difference. That's the problem.
Okay.
I'm Greg.
I'm Chip.
We're the News Guardians. We'll be right back on Fox Radio 910.
This is News Guardians. News Guardians.
I love your show, man. It's great. We just need to talk about it.
On WFJX, Fox Radio 910.
And we are back.
They love our show, Greg.
Of course they love our show. Who wouldn't love our show? Well,
Statists
wouldn't love our show. Yeah, that guy at the Roanoke Times doesn't love our show.
Which guy? There's lots of guys at times who don't like our show.
I bet Dave Trinkle doesn't love our show.
Ray Ferris
certainly doesn't love our show. Bill Bestpitch doesn't love our show.
Pretty much, we're on the bad list for every statist politician and supporter of the status quo.
Yeah, if you have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo of control and sometimes outright tyranny of people, then you will not like the show. That's just a given, and I don't know what I can do about that. I can.
Well, I think it's designed to call them out on the carpet.
Well, and I'll tell you what I have been trying to do about it, and this will the next story we're going to talk about will explain this. But Valerie Garner, who writes for the Roanoke Free Press, who we like very much. Valerie is wow left. I mean, I don't even know how, but she's a really nice lady. She's always been very nice to me, except for once, and I've forgiven her for that. And I think she's forgotten, so I'm going to forget. So now you forgot that I said it, okay? Okay. So
just keep going, man. You're rambling today. Go.
So anyway, she posted. She's been posting about a lot of the stuff that's going on in Roanoke, and I ended up in a discussion with a lot of her Facebook friends, which are largely Democrat and liberals and statists and socialists, and and trying to explain to them the hateful nature of using the deadly force of government to make other people participate in things against their will, and being willing, if they refuse and continue to refuse because they believe it violates their natural rights, being willing to use the government to use deadly force against them to make it happen. And they didn't quite understand this concept. And there was this thread that went on for 60, 70 posts. I mean, it just going on for 2 days. And then I ran across this story, which I hoped would exemplify what it was I was trying to talk about in a situation that these people could understand. So I'm going to read this to you. This is from the InstituteForJustice.com. It's ij.org, actually. If you want to braid hair for a living in Missouri, you must spend thousands of dollars on at least 1,500 hours of cosmetology training that teaches you nothing about hair braiding. That's far more time and money than it takes to become a licensed EMT in the state of Missouri. Joe Benang and Tamika Stingers have been braiding hair for almost their entire lives. Each of them is operating a fairly successful hair braiding business. They do African hair braiding, which they say is a centuries-old natural hair care technique that uses no dyes, no chemicals. It's safe for the braider to perform because it doesn't let the person, it doesn't hurt the person who's getting their hair cut. It doesn't hurt the hair. But Missouri wants to turn these two women into criminals because of licensing schemes that some of them started all the way back in the 50s. Is requiring them to obtain government licenses, permits, pay fees, and get training that have nothing to do with what it is they're doing. So I posted this story on that Facebook thing to say, okay, this is exactly what I'm talking about, people. You've got a situation where you are using government. You are allowing the use of government to use deadly force to force people to do things as inane as making these girls go to cosmetology school for 1,500 hours, pay thousands of dollars in fees and licensing just to braid somebody's hair. Because here's how this works. Honestly, they shouldn't have to ask permission to braid hair from the state of Missouri or the United States of America or their neighbors or the local city government. But, so they go on braiding hair. So the city or the state one will get a warrant against them and want to drag them in front of a judge so that the judge can tell them you're going to have to braid hair, get a license to braid hair, and now you're going to pay a fine because you didn't ask us permission. So if they still go on with the belief that the government doesn't have the authority to do that and refuse to be taken in, they refuse the warrant for hair braiding, people, for hair braiding, then state police, local police, some sort of law enforcement from the state of Missouri is going to show up with guns, and they're going to force them to be taken in, using deadly force if necessary, to make them comply. So I explained that on this Facebook page. And for 36 hours, nobody has said a word now. Because they obviously they don't understand what to do with this. How do you get people to understand?
Because you're asking people to change their entire perception of what they think is right, and that's hard to do for people.
Well, do you think this story jostled their brain a little bit?
It could have.
I mean, is that why for 36 hours nobody has said a word after posting every 5 minutes for 2 straight days?
I'm sure they'll forget about it soon.
Well, the point here is they got to understand that, there are things that the legitimate use of force in government is required for. If you've committed murder or rape or robbery or assault, or if you've really done something to someone and you need to be arrested and taken in front of a judge so that justice can be done, and you refuse to, well, in those cases, then whatever force is necessary to bring you to justice is warranted. It's reasonable, don't you think?
Yes.
But when your offense is braiding somebody's hair, is that the kind of thing that we believe we should use the deadly force of government against people to enforce?
Of course not. But licensing has become a scam. It's a way. Well, I mean, we've got to make sure we protect consumers. And we've got to be, because government's role is to protect the consumer.
No, government's role is to protect our rights.
Every time somebody scams somebody, every time that somebody has a bad product, every time somebody makes a mistake, the first thing that happens is what?
They scream to government to do something about it.
What is government? What are you going to do about this? We're going to pass a law. We're going to regulate it and license it.
You don't need to do that. There's already a process for that. If somebody frauds you in doing business, you can take them to court. You don't even have to have a lawyer. In Virginia, General District Court, you don't even have to have a lawyer. You can go down and fill out the paperwork and drag them into court and get restitution on your own. You don't need a law, and you don't need a cop, and you don't need politicians. You don't need to run elections and get a number of people to vote for you to get your way. If you have been done wrong, the process is already there.
But that's way too hard. It'd be easier if the government would just stop it up front. Right?
Really? Spending 5 minutes filling out some paperwork and showing up for your day in court is actually harder than having to spend your entire lifetime volunteering and getting involved in politics and donating money and making phone calls and working polls and having to lobby politicians. All of that nonsense is actually easier than 5 minutes worth of paperwork and a court date, honestly.
Yes.
There's something wrong with Chip. I'm hoping that the reason why nobody commented for the next 36 hours, and they still haven't as of this morning, is that it jarred them. It's woken them up to possibly being able to understand something in a different way today. I'm praying that these people can start to see that there's something amiss here in what they've been.
Optimistic.
I'm not optimistic. That's why I'm praying. Because I don't think I can do it. I think it's going to take divine intervention for this kind of thing to happen.
But everything from, because you don't have to be somebody on the left on this. It's the concept of marriage licenses or something that it's ingrained in society. You got to get a marriage license from the government. Why? Why do I have to have a marriage license from the state to get married?
The dirty little secret is, in many places, marriage licensing was instituted to prevent blacks from marrying whites, and to keep blacks from marrying each other, so that they would be able to pester their ability to pass their belongings and their property along to their heirs, or to their wife, which they can't have if they can't get a license.
In Virginia, the original laws were set up specifically to ensure that you were tithing to the state, the Church of England.
Yeah, it was to make and also to make sure that you paid your tribute to the king.
Right. It was strictly a tax incentive. So why on earth are people fighting desperately to change the rules of how government views a religious ceremony?
Because they've been made to believe that there's something to be gained from it. And the only reason why there's anything you could possibly believe to be gained from it is because we've given government power it shouldn't have. And now you have to get in bed with that to get this, which you shouldn't have had to do in the first place.
Right. I mean, because there's no one believes in the traditional definition of marriage more than I do. I just don't want the government to be the one to tell me what it is or isn't, what the definition is.
No one should have to hire a lawyer or a lobbyist just to braid hair, Chip.
Or anything else.
It's as simple as that.
You just want anarchy, Greg. That's all it is.
No.
Anarchy.
No.
Anarchy.
I didn't say eliminate the court system
How are
and the
you going to
justice
be
system.
protected? How are you going to have an encyclopedia-filled book of regulations to enforce if you don't have licensing requirements?
You don't need an encyclopedia set of books with regulations to enforce to have an orderly society that gets along and respects other people's rights. That's the kind of crap you have when you want a society that's always fighting with each other, that is always having to fight with government, that is always having to ask permission and always having to get involved in political affairs to have the slightest little things done that they should already have the right to in the beginning. That's why you have an encyclopedia volumes of books full of regulations. It's to oppress people, not to protect them.
Always fix all the world's problems.
Another case in point. This is also from Kansas. Kansas is a pretty rough place. You wouldn't think so. But Leawood, Kansas, this comes from KCTV, which is Channel 12 in Kansas. City to fine owners of little free libraries. Can a library be illegal? This TV station asks. The city of Leawood says yes. Little free libraries are popping up across the metro. They allow book lovers to borrow and share their favorite books whenever they want. Now, how this works is people who want to participate in this, they have a little stand with a little box that's got a little cover on it to keep it out of the rain and little glass doors on the front, and they put books in them. And so you can, when you see one of these, you can pull up, and if you or walk by, you can stop and see a book you want to read. You can take it and read it and bring it back. Or if you have some books you'd like to share with other people, you can put them in these little box libraries in people's yards. But the city says that's illegal. So these people came back to their little free library to find a letter from code enforcement saying they had an illegal dwelling and structure on their property.
Yeah. That's good, because we can't have people running their own libraries. That could cause chaos in the streets.
Now, explain. This is what I'm saying. This is our entire society is upside down. It is operating in reverse because politicians and people who support the status quo believe that the government ought to be able to point a gun at you and force you to pay for a public library run by the government. But you should not be allowed to build a little box with a rain cover on it and let people borrow books and leave books for free on your own private property. What is wrong with these people?
Don't you understand the sense of community you get from a real library, Greg? Don't you understand the importance of having a gathering place where the government can give you information about stuff and provide a place for the community to bring stakeholders together to decide on your future?
Really? Because this is what the Collinses said. My neighbors think it's awesome. Ken McGregor, who lives across the street, says when they put it up, I thought it was kind of cool. I would see the grandparents sit there and read to their kids. People came by and put books. It was a lot of fun. Doesn't that sound like the sense of community that you're talking about?
But it has to come from the government, correct?
Yeah, the sense community can only happen when you point guns at people, require them to build something, and then force people to go there to have a community once it's built.
You know what?
That's what's supposed to be the right way to do things?
Yeah, of course. I can see why no one wanted to talk to you anymore in that Facebook thread.
What?
Because you're blowing their mind, man.
Am I speaking a foreign language here?
You just don't understand how things work.
Yes, I am speaking a foreign language. The language is liberty, and people don't know how to speak that anymore, and that is the problem. We'll be right back on Fox Radio 910.
News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
And we are back. And I am proud to announce the News Guardian. Chip Darbutton has a story for you. Run with it, Tarbutton.
Wow. So I'm sure everyone in our audience has heard the president talk about and mock anyone who dares refute the global warming data that he so consistently talks about.
Yes.
According to realscience.com, summers used to be much hotter in the U.S. And what's happened is, if you look back at historical data, before the government fudged with it, the hottest summer in recent American history were the 1930s.
Wow.
So if you're taking that hockey stick graph that shows the temperature getting hotter,
right,
to make that work, that doesn't work really well.
Why?
Because then the hockey stick is more like a boomerang.
Oh, you mean the real temperatures?
Right. Don't. So what they had to do was go back. The government has, over the past few years, they've been tampering with the data. So they're actually going back and changing the temperatures in past years to make it look cooler in those years so that it's hotter in recent years.
So as they show their graph, the claim that carbon dioxide levels have increased, they fake the surface temperatures to match it so that they can show that the warming coincides with the increase in carbon dioxide. Is that what you're trying to tell me, Chip?
Yes, and in fact, yes. And the funniest part about this is that the guy that runs this site, of course, he's been attacked by the 97% of those scientists who are trying to get grants from the government to study global warming.
Right.
He says, I've been accused several times in the last 24 hours of data tampering and cherry picking because I use the entire unaltered measured data set. Only altered fabricated data which reverses the measured U.S. cooling trend is considered acceptable by climate alarmists. That's his quote. So basically, he's gone back and he's researched it, and he's found the data before they fudged the numbers and the numbers after they fudged the numbers from the source. I mean, he's not making these numbers up. He's getting them from the government agencies that monitor weather data. In fact, in the 1980s, they actually came out and said, well, there's no real data that shows any kind of increase in temperature. So that was kind of stricken from the record. And then they fudged the numbers to make it look worse.
One NOAA climate scientist who was saying things similar to this that the evidence didn't show it, and here's why, was fired from NOAA. They booted him out.
Well, and it's not just U.S. data. They've also fudged the numbers. NASA and NOAA have fudged the numbers for Iceland, Australia. They've fudged the numbers as well. They show the and if you go out to his website, which is what's his name, realscience.com, he's got a really interesting graph, and it'll show you it's a little video, and it shows the graph before they altered it and the graph after they altered it. And it shows that, before they altered it, it doesn't really show any kind of trend. After they altered it, it looks like it's getting hotter really fast.
Well, I got a question. If the hottest temperatures were actually recorded in the United States, surface temperatures, were in the 1930s, does that mean that the Depression, because that coincided with those temperatures, does that mean that an economic depression actually fueled hotter surface temperatures? So economic downturns can make things hotter. So shouldn't we try to have economic prosperity to reduce the climate temperatures?
No, I think it proves that the sun and Earth cycles beyond the control of mankind control what the temperature is.
So you think it's possible that the sun can actually have more control on the temperature of the Earth than man can?
Yes.
Really?
The sun has more of an impact on the temperature of the Earth than your SUV does.
Dude, you're blowing my mind right now.
I know. It's hard to believe. And it's hard to believe because I know that we've been shown time and time again over the past few years that government data we get on everything from the economy to whether or not they're spraying stuff into the atmosphere to
whether Lee Harvey Oswald worked for the CIA.
I mean, all this information is so accurate, and the government is so truthful with information they disseminate to the public. Why would anyone doubt that the government? I mean, why should you doubt these data points when we're just trying to save the planet, Greg? I mean, I joke around. There's a cartoon floating around the internet about how Captain Crunch. He wasn't really a captain. He was a commander.
He was a commander, right.
And it's like all my childhood was a lie.
2 stripes.
But honestly, it's getting to a point now where you literally cannot trust any information you're getting from the government. And these are people you're voting for last I checked. So perhaps that means you should be taking people, not voting for the same people you don't trust anymore.
Whoa. You are blowing my mind. A captain has 4 stripes, by the way, and a commander has 3. And on the front of the Captain Crunch box, the captain has 3 stripes.
Those coyotes are much faster than roadrunners.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that music means we're done. It's the fastest hour in radio, and it's over again. The stories we talked about today, as well as today's podcast, will be posted at newsguardians.com later today. Check it out, share it with your friends, and be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.